A week ago, my family hopped on a short flight to Singapore, and before we left, I prepped a bunch of items that could act as snacks or quick meals in our hotel. And in today's video, I'm going to walk you through everything I prepared in case you too are hoping to eat more plants even while traveling or need to stick to a certain diet while in a hotel. To start, we are going to make some nut butter. I always travel with nut butter, and as many of you know, I'm avoiding peanut butter right now to heal my skin, and so I whipped up a mixed nut butter. So to start, I just put 2 cups of mixed nuts on a baking sheet and roasted them at 350 degrees for about 8 to 15 minutes until fragrant. And while they were roasting, I got to work on some tahini cookie dough balls. You guys know how much my family loves cookie dough balls, energy bites, bliss balls, whatever you want to call them, and I am always switching up the nut butters and mix-ins we use, so this day I chose to use tahini as our nut butter and add in some dark chocolate chunks to make these cookie dough bites that had almond flour and ground flaxseed and oats in them. And usually I would recommend to stir all of the dry ingredients together first before adding in your liquid ingredients, but I forgot, but they still turned out just fine. I just put everything together in a large mixing bowl, stirred it together until a uniform batter or dough formed, and then with damp hands I rolled the dough into balls and put them in a Tupperware container. I wanted to have variety in our handheld snack options, so next I whipped up some Chewy oatmeal granola bars, and these are my new favorite snack, and they come together so quickly. What you're going to do is start by toasting some chopped nuts and rolled oats until fragrant for about 10 minutes in total. And then in a saucepan, you are going to stir together some coconut sugar, coconut oil, a thick liquid sweetener like rice syrup or honey if you're not vegan, and you are going to let that come to a simmer and get really thick and combined while whisking it often. Your rolled oats and chopped nuts should finish toasting around the same time that your sticky liquid syrup is ready. And so what I like to do is line an 8x8 baking dish with some parchment paper. This is a good trick to help the parchment paper go in more easily. Just crumple it up with your hands, maybe even get it a little wet with some water, and it should go in really smoothly, and you will be ready to put your batter into it. Next, I'm going to put my toasted oats and nuts and my dried fruit of choice into the saucepan with the liquid sticky mixture, and you're just going to stir this together really well until all of the oats and dried fruit have been coated in the sauce, and then you're going to pour this mixture into your lined baking dish. I love to get my hands damp so that they don't get stuck to the sticky oats, and you're just going to spread the oat mixture into a level, even layer, and then press it down as firmly as possible with damp hands or a wet spoon, and then I like to use a cup to press it down even more. And then lastly, a trick that I have found works really well with homemade granola bars is to fold the parchment paper over top of the granola bars so that you can really pack down the edges, as those tend to break off or crumble easily. Once you've got your mixture all packed in really tightly, you are going to stick this in the fridge to let it solidify and get really hard for about an hour or 2 before cutting it into bars. By this point, your mixed nuts should be roasted, and I've already allowed them to cool completely before I transfer them to my food processor. I found that when they are cooled off, they turn into butter a lot more quickly, so that is something that I do every time now. I also like to add in some salt. Next, you're just going to process your mixed nuts until smooth, stopping every once in a while if needed to scrape down the sides of your bowl, and just process until a really liquidy, smooth mixed nut butter forms. While my nut butter was processing, I washed and stabbed some sweet potatoes. I found that a starchy, hearty sweet potato travels a lot better than orange sweet potatoes, so I like to travel with Japanese sweet potatoes because they hold their shape and don't get mushy when in a Tupperware or shoved into a backpack. So as soon as my nuts had been removed from the oven, I bumped up the temperature to about 400 degrees and put in my washed and poked sweet potatoes. Stay tuned to the end of the video and I'll show you guys how I whip up a simple meal in my hotel with these potatoes. Next, I wanted to prep some fresh produce. I usually don't travel with a ton of produce because I find it gets overripe or mushy in our bags, but I have found that carrots and apples travel really well, and so I decided to cut up some peeled whole carrots. Whenever I cut carrots, I love to use this wavy knife as it makes carrots such a fun texture and shape, and my kids eat a lot more of them, so I will be sure to link that down below. Whoa! Truck? Does the truck want carrots? Is the truck gonna eat carrots? I'm not. Once I chopped up all my carrots, I just transferred them to a Tupperware container that, again, holds its shape really well. I just find this keeps fresh produce a lot better when traveling. And I moved on to chopping up some apples. We love really tart, crunchy, crisp apples. So these are some Jazz apples, I believe. And one thing that I have found makes my kids eat more apples is when I cut them into these stick shapes. Not slices, but sticks. So a lot skinnier and like a stick, I guess. And another trick I have for traveling with cut up apples is to coat them in some cinnamon. So this is a new trick that I use on a daily basis. My kids eat way more apples this way just because they taste better with the cinnamon on them, and it keeps the cut up apples from turning brown. And I guess if they do turn brown, you won't really know because they're already coated in cinnamon, but I have found that these cut up cinnamon apples last for a few days in my fridge. So I love making homemade nut butter. I make it on a regular basis and I'm always mixing up the nuts, but in general, 2 cups of roasted nuts and some sea salt always turns out delicious. So here my nut butter is creamy and smooth and liquidy, and I am just pouring it into a jar, which I realized was too big, so I transferred it to another smaller jar, and we quickly ate through that jar during our time in Singapore. By this point, my sheet of granola bars had been chilling in the fridge for a few hours, and they were nice and chewy and solidified, and so I just cut them into rectangles, just like you would buy them at the store. And this recipe is perfect for travel. These granola bars hold together so well. They don't crumble even after they've been out of the fridge for a while, and we love them so much. I really hope you guys give this recipe a try. I will have all of the recipes or ingredients and instructions linked down below or written out if I don't have a blog post. Once my granola bars were all cut into rectangles, I combined them with the cookie dough balls in my large Tupperware container, and these were so nice to have on hand when we were out at the zoo or scoping out a new place in Singapore. I can't tell you how many times these hearty, sweet snacks came in handy to curb our hunger or to prevent a meltdown. And the last thing I needed to pack were my roasted and cooled sweet potatoes. So these cooked for about an hour in total in a 400-degree oven, and they were so nice to have on hand. And now here is an overview of all the food I took with us to Singapore. I brought a store-bought bag of granola, a bag of chia seeds, and a bag of coconut sugar to add to our oats. I brought our granola bars and our cookie dough bites. Chocolate for me, of course, and some of my favorite tea. We've got our cut up produce as well as our nut butter. We've got some crackers that always come in handy, a bag of rolled oats, and my roasted sweet potatoes. I don't know about any of you other parents out there, but it seems like my kids are always hungry. We left for the airport not long after breakfast, and of course, halfway through the drive, they were already asking for a snack. So I got out some of those cinnamon apples and granola bars, and those held us over until our plane ride, where yet again my kids asked for a snack. I'm always glad when I bring heartier snacks with us because sometimes we aren't able to stop for a meal, things just don't go to plan. So again, they had some more granola bars and those cookie dough balls, which are full of fiber and nut butter, so they kept them full for a lot longer than maybe just some carrots or apples would. Then for some simple meals in the hotel, we saved a lot of money by eating breakfast in our hotel room. Thankfully, we had a stove and some basic kitchen appliances, so every morning I would just whip up some oats. We bought some non-dairy milk when we got to Singapore, and I would just cook the oats in some milk and water, add in chia seeds and a little bit of coconut sugar for sweetness and flavor, and I would just cook the oats until thick. Another thing I also brought is some table salt, as I am trying to avoid iodine for my skin. Kind of a random thing, but just thought I would show you how I even thought about the type of salt I needed to bring on my trip. So for breakfast, we would just have the cooked oats, and we would top it with either some peanut butter that I had made and brought, or my mixed nut butter, some more fruit we bought while we were in Singapore, and we love some crunch on our oatmeal, so we would add a little bit of that granola. And of course, I can't go a morning without my black milky tea, so those tea bags I brought came in really handy. Then for a couple of the days, I would prepare some food in our hotel room for my lunch. And at the grocery store, I just got some canned beans and veggies with the pull tab so that I didn't have to use a can opener. And I would just eat those with one of my baked sweet potatoes and a little bit of the salt I brought. And even though it was simple, it was such a delicious, hearty meal. And that is all the foodie content I have from our trip to Singapore. If you guys like my meal prep videos, be sure to press that subscribe button so that you don't miss the next video. And I'll see you very soon. Bye!